Amelia stood under the golden sweep of city lights, tears blurring her vision as Nathaniel knelt before her, not as a billionaire, not as a public figure, but simply as the man who had seen her broken and loved her still. "I'm not just asking you to marry me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm asking you to continue building a life with me, a life that turns every heartbreak into hope." In that single moment, surrounded by a city that had once witnessed her fall, Amelia realized sometimes the most painful endings are just secret doorways, leading us to the most beautiful beginnings. Today, let's walk through this powerful journey, a story about loss, courage, and the breathtaking magic of second chances. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Now, let's begin. Amelia Dawson gripped the cool porcelain of the courthouse sink, staring into the mirror as if it might offer answers she no longer had the strength to seek. At 36, Amelia had crafted a life that others envied, senior partner at a towering Manhattan law firm, the proud owner of a historic townhouse in Chelsea, and until this afternoon, the firm belief that her marriage was built on something unshakable. She almost laughed at the cruel irony. She, who could negotiate billion-dollar mergers with razor precision, had failed to notice her own life quietly unraveling at the seams. The fluorescent lights above painted cruel shadows under her eyes, deepening the exhaustion etched into her features, the kind of exhaustion that no amount of sleep could ever erase. She still remembered, too vividly, the day the truth had shattered her world. 3 months ago, an ordinary act of kindness, a pot of homemade soup, a surprise visit to her best friend Emily, who claimed she was bedridden with the flu, had turned into something unspeakably cruel. Instead of finding Emily sick in bed, Amelia found her entwined with Daniel, her husband of 10 years, a decade of memories, promises, and quiet Sunday mornings crumbled in a single breath. Earlier today, she had stood tall before the judge, the leather of her navy heels steady against the cold courtroom floor. Across the aisle, Daniel whispered with his attorney, wearing the very suit she had gifted him the year before, a gift once chosen with love, now hanging off his frame like a lie. In the matter of Dawson versus Dawson, the petition for divorce on grounds of infidelity is hereby granted, the judge declared, his gavel falling with a sound that echoed inside her chest, a sound that should have marked her freedom. Instead, it left her feeling weightless, unmoored. The fading light of an October afternoon spilled through the courthouse windows, gilding the stone floors with a fragile, golden sheen. Amelia wrapped her old cashmere scarf closer around her neck, another relic of her former life she could not yet let go. Ignoring the pitying looks of colleagues who had once admired her rise and now witnessed her fall, she descended the marble steps and stepped into the cool city air. Normally, she would have marched straight back to the office, thrown herself into case files until midnight erased the pain. But today, the towering glass facade of Dawson and Reed felt like a prison, not a refuge. Today, she turned away from ambition, from pride, from everything that had defined her. She wandered instead toward the soft, worn lights of the Marlowe, a quiet bar tucked along Haven Street, its doors just swinging open for early patrons. Just one drink, she lied to herself, even as she crossed the threshold. Today was not a day for self-control. Today was a day to lose herself. Inside, the bar welcomed her with the comforting scent of old wood and fading jazz. Behind the counter, a gray-haired bartender looked up from polishing a glass and offered her a kind smile. "Rough one, huh?" he asked gently. Amelia slid onto a cracked leather stool, setting her worn Prada bag beside her, feeling the first real crack in her composure. "You have no idea," she whispered, and for the first time in a very long time, Amelia Dawson allowed herself not to be strong. Bourbon, Neat, double, Amelia had said, her voice thick with grief. Now, consciousness returned to her in slow, punishing waves, each one more brutal than the last. First, the pounding in her temples, relentless as a drumbeat. Then, the desert-dry ache of her throat. Finally, the sinking, nauseating awareness that she had absolutely no idea where she was. She cracked open one eye and instantly regretted it. Sunlight spilled mercilessly through towering windows, illuminating a view of Central Park so perfect it could have been painted. This was not her bedroom. This was not even a bedroom in any house she knew. The bed she lay in, an enormous king size, was wrapped in sheets so soft they could only be Egyptian cotton, blindingly white against her wrinkled black Armani dress. At least, she noted dimly. Her shoes had been neatly placed beside a modern leather chaise lounge nearby. Small mercies. The entire space whispered wealth, but not the loud, gaudy kind, a careful, restrained opulence. Abstract paintings, maybe even real Rothkos, hung against muted gray walls. A floating staircase twisted upward toward a hidden second floor, and through an open door she caught a glimpse of a marble bathroom bigger than her first apartment in Brooklyn. A rich, bitter scent filled the air. Coffee, freshly brewed, expensive enough to shame her entire grocery budget. "Good morning," a deep voice called from somewhere beyond the doorway. Amelia's heart rocketed into her throat. Panic flared as she scrambled upright, her hands searching instinctively for her phone. There it was, sitting neatly on the nightstand, plugged into a sleek wireless charger. She grabbed it 9:47 in the morning, 17 missed calls, most from her assistant. No obvious signs of foul play. Still, her pulse hammered wildly in her ears. "Who's there?" she rasped, her voice hoarse. Her purse sat untouched on a nearby table, her wallet still visibly tucked inside. A figure appeared in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, late 30s, with silver dusting the dark hair at his temples. He carried 2 mugs of coffee with a casual ease that belied the sharp intelligence in his gray eyes. He wore a simple cashmere sweater and tailored pants, yet somehow radiated a quiet authority that made the room feel smaller. "Nathaniel Cross," he said calmly, remaining just outside the threshold like a man aware he was dealing with something fragile. "And before you panic, I promise there is a perfectly reasonable explanation." Her brain struggled to catch up. Nathaniel Cross, founder of Cross Innovations, the man who had turned artificial intelligence into a miracle tool for early medical diagnoses. His company now valued at nearly $50 billion, a man whose name carried as much weight in philanthropy circles as it did in technology. She blinked, half speaking to herself. "I am in Nathaniel Cross's penthouse." A smile tugged faintly at his mouth. "Yes, you are." "But why?" she whispered, gripping the coffee he offered with shaking hands. Nathaniel stepped further into the room, settling into the leather chaise with a respectful distance between them. "Because you needed help last night, and I happened to be there." Slow, disjointed memories stirred the bitter burn of bourbon, the ache of tears she could no longer hold back, the older bartender quietly cutting her off, the humiliation of her frozen credit card when she tried to call a car, frozen accounts, frozen marriage, frozen life. "You were at the Marlowe," she said, realization dawning. Nathaniel nodded. "I stop in sometimes after late meetings. It is quiet, easy to disappear." He hesitated, studying her gently. "I saw you at the bar, and at first, I was going to leave you alone. You seemed like you needed space." He smiled wryly. "But then, you launched into what might be the most passionate, drunken monologue about trust and betrayal I have ever heard." Amelia flushed, burying her face in one hand. Of course she had. Of course. On the worst night of her life, she had made a spectacle of herself, and in front of one of the most powerful men in the city. no less. Nathaniel took a slow sip of coffee, his gaze never leaving hers. "You were not wrong, by the way," he said quietly, and for the first time in what felt like months, Amelia felt something deep inside her flicker, something dangerously close to hope. "You gave the most impressive rant about corporate law I have ever heard," Nathaniel said, amusement flickering across his face, followed by a scathing takedown of marriage as an outdated institution. Amelia groaned, covering her face with one hand as a fresh wave of mortification flooded her. "Please tell me I did not," she whispered. "You did," Nathaniel confirmed, laughter hidden in the corners of his mouth. "And when you nearly toppled off your bar stool trying to leave, I could not in good conscience let you stumble off alone." He set his own coffee down with a soft clink. "My driver brought you here. The housekeeper helped you get settled in the guest room. I stayed upstairs, in the master suite." Amelia lowered her hands, studying him carefully. "That is surprisingly decent of you," Nathaniel shrugged, the corner of his mouth lifting into a half-smile. "Do not sound so shocked. Some of us billionaires actually try to be decent human beings." The rich scent of coffee wrapped around her again, grounding her, steadying her shaking hands. It was made exactly how she liked it, just enough bitterness, no sugar. Either a remarkable guess or a sign she had managed to coherently ramble her coffee preferences the night before. A silence, comfortable this time, stretched between them. Later, they moved onto the terrace, where Manhattan sprawled endlessly beneath the brightening sky, the glass and steel skyline catching the morning sun like scattered diamonds. Amelia cupped her third coffee, the porcelain warm against her palms, studying Nathaniel from over the rim of her mug. "You said you wanted to help me," she said cautiously. "Mr. Cross." "Nathaniel," he interrupted gently. She inclined her head. "Nathaniel," she amended. "I appreciate the rescue last night. I do, but I am not some charity case. I am still one of the best corporate attorneys in New York." Nathaniel leaned forward slightly, elbows resting casually on his knees, his expression open, earnest. "And I am not offering charity," he said. "I am offering an opportunity." He paused, letting the words settle between them before continuing. "Cross Innovations is expanding our legal division, especially within our foundation. We need someone who not only knows corporate law inside out, but understands what it feels like when life blindsides you." The words struck deeper than Amelia expected. Memories pulled at her small, seemingly insignificant moments that, in hindsight, screamed betrayal. The night Daniel came home late, reeking of the lavender perfume Emily always wore, how she had brushed it aside, burying herself in contracts and quarterly reports instead of asking the hard questions. "You speak from experience," she said quietly. Noting the shadow that crossed Nathaniel's features, he nodded slowly, his fingers idly drumming against the armrest. 5 years ago, I was engaged to Charlotte. She was our chief financial officer, my partner in every sense. We built Cross Innovations together from a tiny garage startup to one of the top tech companies in the country. He smiled, but it was thin and full of old pain. Then I found out she had been selling proprietary tech to our competitors for years. Not just betrayal, but sabotage. It almost destroyed everything I had built. Amelia felt an ache bloom deep inside her chest, an ache that understood too well. "And how did you survive that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Badly. At first," Nathaniel admitted. "I buried myself in work, shut out anyone who tried to get close, but then I realized—" He gestured out toward the city. "If I let her betrayal define me, then she won, twice." His voice softened. "So I built something different, the Cross Foundation, A way to take all that hurt, all that brokenness, and turn it into something that rebuilds lives. Amelia sat back, letting the morning breeze lift a strand of her hair across her cheek. It felt strangely symbolic, the way he spoke as if offering her a bridge between who she had been and who she could become. Her thoughts wandered to that Sunday morning 3 months ago, standing barefoot in her kitchen, flipping pancakes while Daniel kissed her cheek and said he was off to meet clients later that night. She had found his wedding ring abandoned in the bathroom sink, left behind in his rush to meet Emily. Her fingers tightened around her coffee cup. "I thought I was good at reading people," she murmured. 8 years of marriage, and I never saw it coming. Her voice cracked on the last words. "Emily was my best friend since law school," she continued, bitter laughter catching in her throat. "She helped me pick my wedding dress." The betrayal tasted even worse when spoken aloud. Nathaniel's voice was steady, kind. "The people closest to us hold the sharpest knives. We give them our blind spots because we trust them. It is not a failure of yours, Amelia." For a long moment, she said nothing, and then, slowly, as the city stirred to life beneath them, Amelia Dawson felt the faintest shift inside her, a crack of light through the darkness. "Trust," Nathaniel said quietly, "is both our greatest strength and our deepest weakness." Amelia studied him carefully, feeling the weight of his words settle in the quiet morning air. "Is that why you have never remarried?" she asked before she could stop herself, immediately wincing at her own boldness. "I am sorry," she added quickly. "That was too personal." But Nathaniel only smiled, a trace of sadness in his eyes. "It is a fair question," he said, "and you are right." He leaned back slightly, his gaze never wavering. "I have been in relationships since Charlotte," he admitted, "but they were careful, controlled, safe." His eyes locked on hers, a quiet intensity between them. "Until recently, I thought that was enough." Amelia's heart gave an unexpected stutter. She broke the moment by looking down at her coffee. "So, tell me more about this foundation position," she said, steering the conversation to safer waters. They spent the next hour deep in discussion. The role Nathaniel described was more than just a job, it was a mission. Leading the legal division for the Cross Foundation's newest initiative, providing resources, advocacy, and hope for people rebuilding their lives after devastating personal crises. The salary was impressive enough to make her blink, but it was not the number that stayed with her. It was the purpose behind it. "We all carry scars," Nathaniel said later, as they stood by the private elevator. He looked out over Manhattan, where the morning sun bathed the skyline in molten gold. "The trick," he continued softly, "is finding people whose scars align with our own." Amelia thought about her empty brownstone, the hollow stares of former friends at charity galas, the pity she hated more than the betrayal itself. "And what if the scars are still bleeding?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathaniel reached out, hesitated, then laid a warm, steady hand on her shoulder. "Then maybe," he said, "we help each other stop the bleeding first." The elevator doors slid closed between them, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Amelia felt something stirring inside her, something sturdier than hope, something closer to belief, not belief in Daniel, not belief in marriage vows or perfect lives or social expectations, belief in herself. Her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Heard you missed work. Hope you are not falling apart without me. 6 months ago." That text would have destroyed her. Now, she only stared at her reflection in the mirrored elevator wall, the faint bruises under her eyes, the resolute set of her mouth, and smiled. She typed a reply. "Actually, I am exactly where I need to be." Then, without hesitation, She deleted the message. Some conversations no longer deserved answers. When the elevator opened onto the lobby, Nathaniel's driver was already waiting to escort her home. Amelia stepped into the sunlight, the cool breeze lifting strands of her hair. For the first time since the day she found Daniel and Emily together, she was not thinking about everything she had lost. She was thinking about everything that still waited ahead, the future, shimmering uncertainly, but full of light. Days blurred into weeks. The draft of her resignation letter sat unsent in her work email. Amelia kept telling herself she needed time to decide, but deep down, she knew. Every coffee meeting with Nathaniel only confirmed it. Every long, quiet conversation, where ambition and pain and resilience twined together like the skyline at dusk. She was no longer chasing a paycheck. She was chasing meaning. Her finger hovered over the send button when the door to her office banged open. Daniel stormed in, waving his phone, his face red with rage. Across the screen, the gossip headline screamed, "Tech Billionaire's New Flame, Cross Spotted with Newly Divorced Power Lawyer." Amelia's stomach twisted. "Are you sleeping with him?" Daniel snarled. "Is that how you got the job?" For a moment, the old fury sparked, but it was different now. Colder, sharper, clearer. "You lost the right to ask about my personal life," Amelia said calmly, her voice a blade wrapped in silk. "The day you decided to crawl into bed with Emily." Daniel flinched. Amelia smiled not with bitterness, but with finality. "And just for the record," she added, "Nathaniel Cross offered me an opportunity, not because of who I slept with, but because he sees something in me that you never did." The truth hung between them, heavy and irrefutable, as Daniel stood there, deflated, grasping for a comeback he could not find. Amelia turned back to her computer. Her finger pressed send. Her resignation flew into the digital ether, and with it, she sent away the last remnants of the life she had outgrown. Outside her window, the city gleamed under the afternoon sun, impossibly bright, impossibly vast, and for the first time in forever, Amelia Dawson was free. The photo attached to the article looked innocent enough, just a candid shot of Nathaniel and Amelia leaving their favorite coffee shop, laughing about something forgotten almost immediately after. But the camera had captured something Amelia had missed at the time, the way Nathaniel looked at her. There was no mistaking it, a softness, a depth that made her chest tighten painfully. Her phone buzzed, a message from Emily, upgraded to Billionaire'S now. "Guess you owe me a thank you." Without hesitation, Amelia blocked the number. Some voices no longer deserved a space in her life. That evening, standing inside Nathaniel's sleek office overlooking the glittering veins of Manhattan, Amelia finally signed the contract. Her fingers hesitated for a fraction of a second before pressing down, sealing her decision. "You know this is only going to fuel the rumors," she said lightly, watching as he filed the papers away. "Does that bother you?" Nathaniel asked, his gray eyes steady and searching. "It should," Amelia admitted. She turned toward the vast window, feeling the city breathe below them. "My whole life, I have fought to be seen for my work, my merit, my sacrifices," she continued quietly. "And now it feels like I am stepping into an easier path, one I did not entirely earn." Nathaniel crossed the space between them, stopping just close enough that she could smell his cologne, subtle, understated, impossibly expensive. But that was not what unsettled her. It was the way he saw her, really saw her. "I have watched you over the past 2 weeks," Nathaniel said softly. "You did not just improve our foundation's legal framework, you revolutionized it." He paused, his voice carrying the quiet weight of sincerity. "You uncovered 3 major liability risks we missed. You built a strategy to expand our outreach globally. Amelia, if anything, I am the one who should be grateful." Her heart raced at the unfiltered admiration in his tone, admiration not for how she looked, not for who she had once been married to, but for what she was, before she could find words. Nathaniel spoke again, even quieter. "There is something else you need to know." Amelia braced herself. "The board," he said, "is concerned about appearances. They worry that if anything personal were to happen between us, it could damage the Foundation's reputation." Her stomach twisted. She knew what came next. The speech about keeping things strictly professional, maintaining distance, preserving images. She steeled herself. "I understand," she said, voice tight. "We should keep things strictly—" "No," Nathaniel interrupted, his voice cutting through her assumptions like a blade through mist. "I told them I could guarantee professionalism, transparency, ethics, but I also told them—" He turned, facing her fully now. The city lights framed him in gold. "That I would not lie and pretend I am not falling in love with you." The words struck her like a thunderclap, stunning, beautiful, terrifying. Her heart seemed to stop and stutter all at once. Every rational part of her mind screamed at the impossibility of this. Too soon, too complicated, too dangerous, but her heart bruised. Healing recognized the truth of it instantly. She did not move away when Nathaniel reached for her hand. She did not flinch when his fingers closed gently around hers. "The press will have a field day," she whispered. "Let them," he said simply. "Some things are worth every headline." That night, Amelia's phone buzzed at 3 a.m. A new email, encrypted. She blinked sleep from her eyes as she opened it. The contents turning her blood to ice: financial records, board meeting minutes, internal memos, all meticulously organized, all pointing to one terrifying truth: someone inside Cross Innovations was orchestrating Nathaniel's downfall. Her heart pounded. Someone wanted her to see this. Someone wanted her to choose. Her intercom crackled suddenly. "Ms. Dawson," her assistant's voice said, uncertain. "Richard Whitmore from the board is here. He says it's urgent." Amelia minimized the files, steeling herself as Richard strode into her office. The head of the finance committee, dressed in an immaculate navy suit, adjusted his gold watch as he smiled, the kind of smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Burning the midnight oil?" "Amelia," he said smoothly, "that is dedication. Just reviewing some proposals." She lied without missing a beat. Richard sank into the chair across from her. All casual authority. "Actually," he said, "I am here with an opportunity." He slid a folder across her desk. "The board is impressed with your work. Very impressed. We are considering creating a new role, Chief Legal Officer, not just for the Foundation." Amelia's heart slammed against her ribs. "This would put you in charge of the entire Cross Innovations legal structure," Richard said. "Everything. Corporate, Foundation, global operations." It was the kind of offer she had once dreamed about, the kind she had spent her entire career chasing. And now, staring at the folder before her, Amelia Dawson realized it might just be the costliest decision of her life. It was the kind of offer that once would have set Amelia's heart racing, the role she had envisioned for herself years ago, back when life still felt predictable, safe. Richard Whitmore's smile was all polished charm, but his words sliced deeper than any insult could have. "Of course," he said lightly. "Such a position requires complete loyalty to the board and a certain discretion regarding any irregularities you may have stumbled upon." The realization hit her with icy clarity. The anonymous documents had not been a warning. They had been a test. "You're planning to remove Nathaniel at the next shareholders' meeting," she said, her voice flat, cold. Richard shrugged, adjusting his designer cufflinks with casual arrogance. Nathaniel is a dreamer. Noble causes are fine for personal fulfillment, not for running a corporation. Our investors deserve focus, profit, not sentimentality. Amelia's stomach twisted. Just like you encourage Charlotte's betrayal, she asked, her voice dangerously calm. Richard's smile widened thin. Cruel. So he told you, he said. Did Nathaniel mention Charlotte came to us first, that we helped her, nurtured her doubts? He was a liability even then. The confession hit Amelia harder than she expected. A fresh wave of revulsion washing over her. You destroyed him once, she said bitterly, and now you're doing it again. Richard rose, smoothing his expensive suit jacket into place. Think about your future. Amelia, he said, tone patronizing. You've already let loyalty cost you everything once. Don't let your heart be your downfall twice. As the door clicked shut behind him, Amelia sat frozen in the dim light of her office, staring at the evidence spread out before her. If she used it, if she exposed the board's treachery, Nathaniel would be protected, but the company would be rocked. Stock prices would crash, employees would suffer, the foundation she had grown to love would crumble. Her phone buzzed on the desk, jolting her. A text from Nathaniel. Dinner tonight. I miss you. 3 words. Simple. Dangerous. Everything. Her heart twisted painfully. She thought of Daniel's sneering message months ago. Hope you're not falling apart without me. She had proven him wrong. She had rebuilt herself from ashes and silence. But was she strong enough now to risk losing everything all over again? There was no escaping the confrontation. Not this time. When she arrived at Nathaniel's penthouse, he was alone in his office, silhouetted against the sprawling lights of the city that had made and broken them both. Without a word, Amelia placed the folder on his desk, every secret, every betrayal, laid bare between them. They offered me a deal, she said quietly. Silence, advancement. A way to have everything I thought I wanted. Nathaniel turned slowly, his face shadowed, unreadable. And what did you choose? His voice was low, almost gentle, but the tension beneath it was a blade poised against her heart. Amelia flinched. That's not fair, she whispered. You can't ask me to. I have to. He cut in, voice rough. Because right now, I'm looking at the woman I love holding evidence that could burn everything I've built to the ground. And I need to know if I'm about to be betrayed again. The words struck her like a slap. Her throat tightened painfully. How dare you? She said, voice trembling. I came here. I brought you everything. I didn't bury it. I didn't run. But you waited, Nathaniel said, stepping closer, anguish stark in his features. You waited until after they offered you everything you ever dreamed of. You think I wanted this? Amelia cried, stepping back. You think I wanted to have to choose between you and my career. You think I wanted to question you? He shot back, anger and heartbreak colliding in his voice. I don't, God, I don't. There was a moment where the air between them was electric with pain, betrayal, the ghost of every trust broken in both their lives. Nathaniel reached for her, desperate, but Amelia flinched away, tears burning her eyes. No, she said, voice like cracked glass. You don't get to doubt me and still reach for me. Not this time. She turned away, unable to bear the look on his face any longer, and behind her, for the first time, Nathaniel Cross, the man who had built empires, who had faced betrayals worse than death, stood utterly, devastatingly still, as if, for the first time, he had no idea how to fix what had been broken. I spent my whole life, Amelia said, quietly, her voice trembling, choosing the safe road, picking security over passion, career over love. She stared down at the contract in her hands, the one Richard Whitmore had smugly placed on her desk just days ago, the offer that once would have been everything she wanted. With a deep, shuddering breath, Amelia tore the thick pages cleanly in half. Nathaniel flinched at the sound, but said nothing, watching her. "I'm making a choice," she said, gathering the files that detailed every betrayal, every lie. "Maybe it's not the smart one. Maybe it'll cost me everything again, but I'd rather lose my career than stand by and watch someone else I love be destroyed." She walked toward the door, then paused, her hand on the frame, her heart on the line. "The real question, Nathaniel," she said, her voice steady now, "is whether you trust me enough to fight with me, or if you're going to let your past with Charlotte destroy what we could still have." Without waiting for his answer, she stepped into the battle she had chosen. The next 2 days blurred into an exhausting symphony of late nights, hastily scrawled notes, legal strategies, and endless cups of coffee. Side by side, Amelia and Nathaniel worked, no anger between them, only a singular, burning focus saving everything they had fought so hard to build. Amelia compiled the evidence with surgical precision, every memo, every hidden meeting, every betrayal stitched together into a tapestry of truth too damning to ignore. When the morning of the shareholders' meeting arrived, she stood before the mirror, adjusting the cuffs of her tailored black jacket. Her hands shook, just slightly. "Are you ready?" she asked, gathering the files into her arms. Nathaniel looked up from his laptop. Exhaustion carved deep into his face, but also something else. Hope. "Thanks to you," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I finally am." He crossed the room to stand in front of her, something unspoken flickering in his eyes. "Amelia, about what I said before." She lifted a hand, stopping him gently. "Later," she whispered. "First, we finish this." The conference room buzzed with tension. Every seat was filled shareholders, executives, journalists who had caught wind of an impending scandal but didn't know the half of it yet. Richard Whitmore sat confidently at the head of the table, oblivious to the coming storm, until Amelia Dawson walked in beside Nathaniel Cross, her expression calm, her arms full of truth. "I would like to address the board before any votes are cast," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the room. And then, with razor-sharp clarity honed over years in courtrooms and negotiations, Amelia laid it bare, every hidden betrayal, every secret meeting, every lie whispered behind closed doors, including the manipulation of Charlotte's betrayal, including the campaign to unseat Nathaniel. As she spoke, Richard's face went from amused to pale to furious. "You call it profits," she finished, her voice ringing with conviction. "I call it greed at the cost of humanity. Drake Technologies was built to change lives, not just line pockets. If investing in people offends you, maybe you're the ones who no longer belong here." The room erupted into murmurs. When the vote came, it wasn't even close. Richard and his allies were stripped of power, pending full investigation, justice swift and absolute. As the press swarmed the building, desperate for quotes, Amelia slipped quietly away to the rooftop garden. She stood there as the sun dipped low, painting the skyline in molten gold. Trying to catch her breath, Nathaniel found her there, as he always somehow did, and when he spoke, his voice was low, reverent. "That was breathtaking," he said. Amelia smiled faintly without turning. "I only did what was right." "No," he said, stepping closer, his hand brushing lightly against hers. "You did what was brave. You chose truth when it would have been easier to walk away. You chose to believe when every scar in your heart told you not to." She turned at last to meet his eyes, finding only warmth there, No anger, no doubt. "I'm sorry," he said, voice breaking. "I doubted you, even for a second." Amelia's hand trembled slightly as she lifted it to his cheek. "We're both still healing," she whispered, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Amelia Dawson didn't feel broken anymore. She felt strong, and maybe, just maybe, finally whole, together. Amelia squeezed Nathaniel's hand, her touch firm yet tender. Maybe perfect isn't what we should chase," she whispered, feeling the weight of the past slowly slipping from her shoulders. "Maybe real is better." Nathaniel smiled, that rare, breathtaking smile he reserved only for her. With gentle fingers, he lifted her chin so their eyes met under the fading light. "When did you get so wise?" he asked softly. "Somewhere between losing everything I thought mattered," she said with a quiet laugh, "and falling for a billionaire with a heart stitched back together from scars." Her smile faded into something more serious. "I meant what I said downstairs, Nathaniel, about changing lives, about this foundation. It mattered to me when I was broken, before I even knew I could be a part of it." Without a word, Nathaniel reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This," he said, pressing it into her hand, "was approved unanimously by the new board 10 minutes ago." Amelia opened it carefully and gasped. "Co-director of the Cross Foundation, with full autonomy over both legal and philanthropic divisions. Nathaniel," she breathed, overwhelmed. "It's not because I love you," he said quickly, his voice steady. "It's because you're brilliant, fierce, exactly what this company needs to become what it's meant to be." He smiled then, a little softer. "The fact that I love you too," he added, "is just the best bonus I could have ever asked for." Below them, the city began to shimmer with nightfall, tiny sparks of light mirroring the one that ignited in her chest. 6 months ago, she had been nothing more than a broken silhouette, adrift inside a crumbling life. Now she stood here whole, fearless, deeply loved. She took the envelope and smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Well," she said, her voice thick with feeling, "I guess this makes us partners, in every possible way." 1 year later, Amelia stood outside the Whitestone Lounge, the place where everything had begun. The air was crisp with the promise of autumn, but this time, the chill didn't sting. It exhilarated. Nathaniel appeared beside her, linking his fingers through hers as naturally as breathing. "You ready?" he murmured. Inside, the lounge had been completely transformed, no longer the dim bar where she had once drowned her sorrow, but now the vibrant launch party for the Phoenix Initiative, a program built to help survivors of devastating divorces rebuild their futures. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone who knew their story. A young woman, no older than 22, approached Amelia with wide, hopeful eyes. "Ms. Dawson," she said, clutching a folder tightly, "your story inspired me to leave my abusive marriage. I'm starting law school next semester through the Phoenix Scholarship." Amelia's heart swelled. She pulled the young woman into a hug, her voice steady. "Call me Amelia, and remember this. This is just the beginning of your story, not the end." All around them, faces beamed survivors, dreamers, believers. Screens behind the bar flickered with images, new homes built, scholarships awarded, job programs launched, lives reclaimed, futures rewritten. When the night wound down, Nathaniel took her hand and led her up to the rooftop terrace, their sacred place. The city sprawled out beneath them, glittering like 1,000 unsaid promises. Nathaniel seemed nervous, fidgeting slightly. "Amelia," he began, his voice roughened with emotion, 1 year ago, you stumbled into my life fierce, brilliant, and slightly drunk, and turned my world inside out. She laughed, the memory vivid in her mind. Not exactly my proudest entrance, she teased. I disagree, he said with a grin. It was the moment I realized second chances aren't just a fantasy. He paused, then dropped to one knee. Amelia's breath caught as he produced a ring understated. Elegant. Breathtakingly perfect. I'm not just asking you to marry me, Nathaniel said, his voice trembling. I'm asking you to keep being my partner in life, in dreams, in everything we dare to build together. Tears blurred her vision. This, she thought, was what it meant to truly begin again, and she knew, with absolute certainty, what her answer would be. In business, in giving, in life. Nathaniel said, his voice steady with emotion. I'm asking you to keep building something real with me, something that not only lifts us, but helps others find their way back from rock bottom. Just like we once did. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes as she looked down at the man kneeling before her. Not Nathaniel Cross, the billionaire the world praised and envied, but Nathaniel, the man who had seen her shattered, who had stayed, who had loved her when she felt most unlovable. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking with the weight of it all. To everything. He slipped the ring onto her trembling hand, the cold metal warming instantly against her skin, as he rose and pulled her into his arms. Amelia thought about that lost, broken woman who had stumbled into the Whitestone Lounge a year ago, thinking her story had ended. If only she could have seen this moment. Seen how her world hadn't fallen apart, it had simply been redirected towards something stronger, truer. I have something for you too, Amelia said, pulling a small envelope from her coat pocket. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow as he opened it, and then a smile lit his face. The first quarter report from the Phoenix Initiative, she explained. We've already helped over 300 people rebuild their lives. Nathaniel, 300 new beginnings. He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers as they both gazed out over the endless city skyline, a living tapestry of hope, heartbreak, and infinite second chances. You know, Amelia murmured. Everyone keeps saying we're helping people start over. Nathaniel looked at her curiously. But I don't think that's quite right, she continued, her smile soft. We're not helping them start over. We're helping them continue just with better chapters ahead. Nathaniel kissed her temple, the touch reverent. And speaking of better chapters, he said, pulling back slightly to meet her gaze, how do you feel about a spring wedding? Amelia laughed through her tears, the sound light and full of life. She thought of everything that had brought her here, the pain, the resilience, the wild, unexpected joy that had found her on the other side of heartbreak. She leaned into him, their futures stretching wide and unwritten before them. I think spring sounds perfect, she whispered. After all, that's when everything blooms again. Sometimes, the greatest love stories are not the ones that begin with perfection, but the ones born from broken pieces courageously pieced together with trust, healing, and hope. Amelia and Nathaniel's journey reminds us all, heartbreak is not the end. It is simply the place where something new, something extraordinary, can begin. In a world that often rushes past pain, they chose to rebuild not just for themselves, but for everyone who needed a second chance. Thank you for sharing this story with us today. If it touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel so we can continue bringing you stories that inspire, heal, and remind us of the beauty in every new beginning. Until next time, keep believing, the best chapters are still ahead.